This Shabbat, we conclude the reading of the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, with the final two portions, Behar, Behukkotai. In the Torah portion of Behar, we read about the Shemitah, the seventh sabbatical year, and also the institution of the Yovel, or the Jubilee year. The Torah tells us, you shall count off 7 weeks of years, so that the period of 7 weeks of years gives you a total of 49. And then on the 50th, you shall sound the horn loud, the shofar. On the 7th month, the 10th day of the month, that is on Yom Kippur, on the Day of Atonement, you shall have the shofar sounded throughout the land. You shall hallow the 50th year. And then the Hebrew goes on to say, Ukratem dror ba'aretz lechol yoshveha. You shall proclaim release throughout the land for all its inhabitants. That would be on the Jubilee year, when all indentured servants were given their freedom, their release. The land would lie fallow. It would be a time of great celebration throughout the land. That verse, you shall proclaim release throughout the land, is notable also for the fact that it is inscribed on the Liberty Bell in Philadelphia, as I am sure you know. On the Liberty Bell, we have the inscription, according to the King James Version, proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof. And another feature of the Liberty Bell that I'm sure you are familiar with is the fact that there is a big crack going down the Liberty Bell. From time to time, people, artisans, experts would try to repair that crack, but to no avail. Eventually the crack would reappear, to the point where they gave up on trying to fix it. It is a permanent part of the Liberty Bell. It is an indelible imperfection in a national landmark in the Liberty Bell. Thinking of the crack in the Liberty Bell, thinking of the idea of proclaiming freedom throughout the land, reminds me of a very well-known song composed by the great poet and singer-songwriter, Canadian Jewish songwriter Leonard Cohen, who died about 4 years ago. The song was written in 1992, and it was called Anthem. The refrain of the song is well known. It goes like this: ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. There is a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. Leonard Cohen was well known for his reluctance to give interviews and commentaries about his music and about his poetry. He just didn't like to talk about it. He felt that the poetry ought to speak for itself and lay open to interpretation on its own without him putting in his 2 cents. But by a notable exception, on a radio interview, Leonard Cohen agreed to speak about the meaning of this song. And this is what he said: the future is no excuse for an abdication of your own personal responsibilities towards yourself and your job and your love. Ring the bells that still can ring. They are few and far between, but you can find them. This situation does not admit of solution or perfection. This is not the place where you can make things perfect, neither in your marriage, nor in your work, nor anything, nor your love of God, nor your love of family or country. The thing is imperfect. And worse, there is a crack in everything that you can put together. Physical objects, mental objects, constructions of any kind. But that's where the light gets in. And that's where the resurrection is. And that's where the return, that's where the repentance is. It is with the confrontation with the brokenness of things. It all boils down to coming to a level of acceptance in our imperfections and knowing that even though there is a crack in everything, that's where the light gets in. Therein lies hope. Therein lies redemption. Therein lies repentance. I noticed an article a few days ago in the New York Times that described a 92-year-old piano teacher, a Holocaust survivor, living in Denver, named Cornelia Vertenstein. For more than 50 years, she taught piano to her students who would come to her at their regular times every week to her home. They would bring their music, and they would bring a little bit of fear and intimidation with them because Mrs. Vertenstein was a relatively formal person, but her students loved her. They were in awe of her. She was a wonderful, wonderful teacher. Then came the coronavirus. The visits had to end, but she would not let the lessons end. She insisted that she find a way to continue the lessons, so it happened. The students would hold to their regular lesson times each week, but this time through their smartphones or through their iPads, using FaceTime, using Skype, whatever technology would be available. What her students did not know, because she didn't talk about it with them, was her terribly traumatic and troubled history. First, growing up in Romania during Nazi occupation, having to wear a yellow star as a teenager, walking through the streets, having rocks thrown at her, and then having to endure years in labor camps, only to emerge from the Shoah and the terrible travails of World War II, having to live under the crushing weight of a communist regime in Romania that was known for its brutal and strict dictatorship under Ceausescu. But she survived that as well. Eventually escaped to Israel with her husband and her daughter in 1961 and landed in America in 1963. But she carried the ghosts of her past with her throughout her years, but she never, ever allowed herself to give in to them. She was always able to maintain a productive life, and she was always able to find purpose and meaning through her family and through her music and her ability to teach her students. Now, every year, she staged a spring recital where all of her students would be featured and would have the opportunity to perform the pieces that they had practiced. This year, of course, this was not to be, or at least that's the way it appeared at first. In previous years, they would engage a hall at the University of Denver where the students and their parents and families would appear for these recitals. Even though this could not happen this year, one of the students' mothers taught Mrs. Vertenstein how to use Zoom. And via Zoom, Cornelia Vertenstein was able to stage a spring recital for all of her students so that their families could enjoy the fruits of their labors, so that they could try to continue a long-standing tradition that she refused to see discontinued in the wake of this terrible pandemic. Mrs. Vertenstein recorded a message that would be played at the beginning of the recital. She didn't want to do it live at the time of the recital because she was worried she would become too verklempt and too choked up. So she recorded it in advance, and that recording is available to see on YouTube. I urge you to watch it. It is quite moving. It can be found on the New York Times website. And she introduced the recital with the following words. I'd like to share them with you now. With great pride, I introduce my students who prepared themselves with discipline and determination in difficult circumstances. When I was a little girl, I couldn't go to public schools because of my religion, and they created a little school in the basement of an old building, which sometimes had heat and sometimes didn't. Great minds and achievements came out of that school, which taught me in any situation you can strive, learn, look ahead, and have dreams. Great minds and achievements came out of that school, which taught me in any situation you can strive, learn, look ahead, and have dreams. It's as if Cornelia Vertenstein is somehow communicating with the spirit of Leonard Cohen. They are on the same wavelength, the same level, the same message. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light comes in every situation, even during trauma, even during travail. You can strive, learn, look ahead, and have dreams. And so too today. The situation that we find ourselves in during these times, while the world is cracked, while our society is broken, that's how the light gets in. Instead of focusing on the darkness of the times, instead of allowing ourselves to be mired in frustration or fear, anger, or resentment, we focus on the light. We focus on the courage of the healthcare professionals, the frontline workers, and their ancillaries, and everyone involved in the healthcare industry today. We focus on those who continue to be involved in service professions, in consumer-oriented professions. Everyone from the takeout restaurant worker to the cashier or bagger at the grocery store. Anyone who is appearing on the job so that the rest of us who may be sheltering in place or staying closer to home may have our needs met. Those are the lights that come in. They are among the lights that give us hope and that give us faith during this dark time. So let's focus on the light, not on the darkness. Let's embrace the imperfection such that we can understand that it is not in the nature of life or world or our existence to be perfect. We may strive for perfection, but there is no perfection other than with God. Instead, we understand that there is a crack in everything. We know that that's how the light gets in, and we learn to accept that and even find gratitude for it each and every day. Perhaps it is no accident that the Jubilee year proclamation was held on Yom HaKippurim, on the Day of Atonement, a day of atonement for our transgressions, a day when we are acutely aware of our imperfections, but a day when we also know and give thanks for the idea that for all those transgressions there is forgiveness. For all of our shortcomings, there remains the possibility of change and improvement. And there is a sense of release and relief. Ukratem dror ba'aretz, proclaim liberty, release throughout the land. On Yom Kippur, we feel a sense of relief and release, knowing that we are not perfect. As we take that spiritual inventory of our souls, we understand that there is a crack in us. But through that crack comes in the light of teshuvah, return, and repentance. Through that crack emerges the hope for a better and more meaningful life each and every day. We will emerge from this pandemic, God willing, stronger, more faithful, and ever committed to the reality of self-improvement, righteous living, caring and concern for one another, and a deepened faith in God. Thank you.